Hello there, welcome to a second thoughts overview of Balthazar Gelt of the Empire. Now I played through the initial turns and have made some conclusions on how to play the faction. I'll be sure to tell you what the differences or the main difference is in comparison with, of course, Emperor Karl Franz. Now this is typically what I look out before actually starting to play with the campaign. So in the end I'll always give you a few army compositions that will definitely try out for some variety in gameplay. Not an in-depth guide, but this will certainly help you out. Now let's play with Balthazar Gelt. For our short victory objectives, we are required to destroy the faction of Sylvania, look at it here, and to occupy, loot, raise, or sack 30 different settlements. Pretty straightforward, pretty easy actually. Achieving this will be rewarded with +3 hero capacity for Lord Heroes. This is a nice buff, I have said this before. It always ensures that you don't have to build too many buildings in the early to mid game, and you can still have enough heroes available to use in your armies or scouts. Now, the long campaign victory, it's slightly different. Short victory conditions, of course, occupy, loot, raise, or sack 70 different settlements, and then control pretty easily all of the Empire, basically. You do need to control the wasteland here, but yeah, for the most part, it's all of the lands of the Empire. It's pretty easy. Achieving hero recruit rank +10 as a reward is always nice. It will ensure that your heroes continue to be relevant, especially the magic heroes, so the casters. It will be good throughout the domination or any ultimate scenario that you may have. Now, Balthazar Gelt, he has the Wheel of Magic. Basically, hero capacity +2 for battle wizards and minus 50% upkeep for those battle wizard heroes. Also, he enjoys +10 armor in all armies. This should help having, you know, a little bit of a chance to have more different army compositions as well, or at least they will still be a little bit better overall. Now, the battle wizards, of course, it will imply that you can have some mixes of different wizards in battle as well. Maybe you can use some compositions that you use 2 wizards instead of just 1, that sort of idea. Now, climate is a rather average. Let me show you here. So lots of unpleasant and uninhabitable still. Let me show you like this. It's one of the best features here. You can see that going to the north it would be a problem, of course, but still one thing that Balthazar Gelt has is that he doesn't have any issues with the mountain. It's suitable climate, which is very good, so that you know, he becomes a little bit better in order to control the full map if that's what you wish. A full domination campaign is certainly possible. Be wary of these regions, of course, and to the north, but yeah, certainly a nice lord to try and make a domination campaign with. As you can show here, of course, the unpleasant climate changes. It's not mountain because that's pleasant, but still in an uninhabitable climate. You can see the differences, of course, and be wary of those when going through your playthroughs. Your starting position is rather average. So you have a 2-settlement province, and only the mountains nearby can actually give you a 4-settlement province, really. You're supposed to conquer Sylvania, but if you rush too fast, maybe your home provinces may become under attack. Now, both borders are defensible, actually, so you do have Fort Sol here, which I advise that you should grow it up a little bit and try to avoid going still through it. Not the best path to follow. For the most part, you should try to even maybe conquer the mountains and the surrounding empire area before moving on away from this area. Okay, so of course, typical expansion should be that. Move to Sylvania while maybe confederating some of these factions, or, you know, taking advantage if they get raised. You can conquer their places while still reconquering anything in your path. Later then the empire, and maybe who else? The world? So, in terms of diplomacy, very easy. You're part of the Order Tide. However, although in an alliance with dwarves would be nice, they're also your neighbors. So conquering their lands, if they end up being destroyed, is maybe a good and safest way, so be on the lookout for that opportunity. One advantage is how easy it is to obtain gold via treaties and trade, especially with the other Empire factions, so do that at the earliest opportunity. Enemies will most likely be the vampire counts, which you need to destroy, some ogres to the south, some greenskins as well. Let me remove this scene here. Yeah, some greenskins to the south, and some, of course, Athaloran units, the Wood Elves. That would be a precarious situation for you should you be expanding way too fast into Sylvania. So be wary of having to defend this location to in the early to mid game too much against the Wood Elves. Now, should Reichland fall, of course, others may come from the north, so like Feasters, for instance. So be wary and pay attention to to the Empire itself if you need to reinforce them, for instance, against several foes. Now, as for outposts, very easy. The same as for Reichland, for sure. You will have the possibility for certain of having some Britonia, some Dwarf or High Elf Alliance. Try to ensure that you can get some of these so that you can, embrace some of their units that you don't really have or lack. For instance, single entities from the High Elves would be really good, and some flying units, of course. Some flying units from Britonia, that's what I would focus on. You already have good cavalry, I would say. And from the dwarfs, their heavy infantry, of course, followed by some of their missile infantry, more because they are really good and at close combat as well, so nothing wrong with having those units in the early game and then upgrading maybe to other units with the outposts as you feel that the campaign progresses. In terms of mechanics, we have prestige. It is our unique currency. It's used to influence other empire factions to your desire. Now, this is an excellent way to ensure that whoever hates us, for instance, is hated by others, and the opposite. For instance, Marcus loves us, and I can make him go to war, maybe by decreasing relations with Emperor Karl Franz, or with someone that honestly hates us, like Stirland. I'll just decrease the relations, etc. So make sure that you use this, especially in the early to mid game, because later on, if you dominate the whole empire, this whole system goes for nothing, of course. So it's more of an early to mid game system. Now, speaking of the imperial authority, it is a measure of how the other elector counts within the empire view your faction. Now, basically, this is a series of poor buffs, let's say, because you can get some growth, some income, nothing too important, or you can get a lot of debuffs, as you see here. If the debuffs in the Imperial Authority falls down too much, you may have a civil war, but note that the civil war it destroys all the other debuffs, so it's fine. And even if it was with these debuffs, you can live with that. So yeah, but civil war, all elector counts declare war on you. Well, the idea is to not trigger civil war, or at least to delay that until you're close to like dominating the whole empire, and then you can wage one war or two to finish off and to control the whole place. That would be a nice idea. Now, the elector count mechanic, it is influenced by the previous two mechanics. So every state capital, for instance, as you see here, will provide an assigned lord with specific traits, okay, and specific weapons, for instance, and a specific unit that you can recruit there, or once you have someone there, okay. For example, I can assign this one to be the elector count of Sylvania. I'll do it right now. And he gains an item, and of course he has now the trait, less attrition from vampiric territory attrition with all empires faction wide, and he also causes fear, causes terror. So that's the sort of idea. There's plenty of them for you to learn and to benefit from those faction wide buffs or from those lord army buffs. Make sure that you have some composition specifically for that, such as, for instance, if you have the elector count of Wissenland, make sure that you give him some artillery, because you will have missile strength plus 10% for artillery units. So that's the sort of idea, okay? Now, you do have these elector count state troops. Basically, these are improved versions of your units. You may even wish to have these army compositions strictly around those units. Now, the main idea is that you slowly influence others into confederating until you're large enough to conquer the whole thing. And you can do this by the fealty. What is the fealty? It is this, a measure of how strongly they like you. If they reach 10, they will confederate. So make sure that you get those that are really close to confederate with you while influencing the others to become destroyed, basically. I'm very close to confederating with a letter count of Everland, so I'll try to be welcoming to him and try to assist him in anything I can. There will be some events that will assist you as well for this. Okay? Now, the state troops themselves, let me talk a little bit about them. So, the state troops themselves, they will have cooldowns before you can recruit, but they can recruit immediately, which is excellent and something that you may consider precisely to have a tactical or strategic advantage when you need to like recruit an army in a hurry. In terms of province edicts, you have a control 1, a enemy hero action success chance of intercepting an army, and corruption. By all means, these sometimes are overlooked, but remember, the wood elves are nearby, the dwarves are nearby. It may be helpful actually to have this in order to intercept those and to try to surprise them and to gain an advantage here. So don't overlook these ones, okay guys? Especially, of course, in the middle of normal terrain, maybe not, but in this case I would be sure to keep an eye on this. Now, you also have income from all buildings, recruitment cost and local recruitment capacity, and a growth and income from trade tariffs. Note that the income from trade tariffs is also faction-wide, which makes it excellent as well to have it here. Of course, you can also have in the fort the more defensive one, if you prefer. Up to you. In terms of the army stances, let me remove this gentleman here, and you have the basic ones. Channeling, it costs 10% movement range to enter it. You can attack while in channeling, by the way, many people don't know this. Encamp and raid, by the way. So encamp enables replenishment and of course immune to attrition. It costs 50% move. Raid gives you some gold, of course. Immune to most attrition, and you need 50% movement to engage. And of course the old good-fashioned ambush and march stances. Ambush, of course, requiring 25% movement. It's quite the basic selection, but it's all helpful. Encamp is going to be the natural selection when you engage or wander in those uninhabitable areas, for instance to the north, should you decide to go there. In terms of buildings, Fildorf, hate that name, only has an income building, but it is on a tier 2, which is kind of great. Now, the nearby Nuln province, let me speak about that first, it does have some great artillery buffs, so you have some buildings that you can build up there. This helps the play style with Balthazar Gelt. Now, military-wise, you require 6 buildings, and 2 of them can be built in minor settlements. I advise especially the armory, as you will need it in order to recruit the most advanced units in your provinces. Of course, the barracks is also important, and it does allow you to have more empire captains, which is basically your main melee defense against any other heroes or lords. Now, tier 3 units are somewhat decent actually. Great swords, the huntsman, you have some form of cavalry, especially some missile cavalry, and you do have some handgunners and artillery within the mortars, so you'll be surprised at how effective you can actually conduct things, even if you only build up some basic buildings. Now, tier 4, it does introduce the cannon and the Hellstorm rocket batteries, and of course the Demigryph Knights, which are your mainstay, the units that will definitely kill everything that you really need to kill fast. So, in terms of infrastructure, let's speak. You do have a specific Imperial Academy building. This is important, especially for that research rate, and the hero recruit rank does help. Recruitment duration -1 turn for great swords and great cannon. That is also, it's one of those things that passes under the radar, you know, but be wary. The main difficulty of this building is how late it comes and the 10,000 gold there. Now, infrastructure, as we're going. A growth and casualty replenishment building. An income generated building. We have a control, and also it unlocks hero recruitment, so it's great. And you have a jack of all trades building. Like I like to say, the campaign movement range, more growth, and some income from all buildings. Note that you actually have, you know, 2 growth buildings, so That alone is helpful, especially for ensuring that your capital, for instance, gets to the tier 5 as quick as possible. Now, the obvious, you may need a second province to build all units, so the obvious circumstance recommendation is Wissenland, because of the artillery bonuses there. So ensuring that they will fail or that others will dislike them is a good way to ensure that you can capture that in a nutshell. Now, research. Research is quite nice. It's so well divided. I love when it's this. It focuses on every part of the game, and especially for Balthazar Gelt, I would go for the missiles and the war machines, particularly because he does have some bonuses with artillery and missile troops. So yeah, that's something good to ensure that you get some buffs. You also, of course, have some trade and industry buffs, some assembly lines, some other buffs such as the research rate. This is always excellent. It's really good to ensure that you can have the benefit of this the fastest. There's an interesting diplomatic corps. Although expensive, this may prove very welcoming to ensure that you can have some bonuses against specific armies, of course, but it also ensures that you can get some specific alliances. This is why, actually, I put the High Elves, the Dwarves, and the Bretonnia as your main targets for outposts. This is how you can achieve that. Diplomatic relations, with plus 50, you'll definitely get some alliances unless you've been at war. One note here, a bad note, let's say, with the Council of Electors. Now, the way that the mechanic works in terms of the elector counts, it kind of makes it so that you will eventually conquer the whole empire. So it has its uses in the beginning to the middle of the game. If you try to let them alive for too long, it may be proving it may be difficult. So the best way that I consider is actually to just capture it, get on with it. So these two may not be the best ones to have, and specifically it still needs an appropriate building, so yeah, that's the idea. As always, we have Lord-specific skills, we have caster or melee skills, red line or army skills, and the blue line or campaign. Now, starting with the blue line, we do have upkeep reduction, which I love, and the casualty replenishment rate, but these are the second part of the blue line. Nothing too important, actually, in the first line. Maybe the attrition from all attrition. This may help, of course, some corruption. It is helpful, but still nothing that game changing, if I may. Lightning strike is of course always a choice if you wish. Now, in terms of the red line, it is rather expensive. I'll explain. The main issue is that any alternative or lesser units will still cost skill points for you. So, in comparison to the elite units, such as the Greatswords, the Demigryph Knights, so you may have a problem if you wish to vary your army compositions. I'll show some in a few minutes. You do, however, have a basic missiles, a basic artillery, so that helps to build up some elite armies, and it should be honestly average in cost, let's say. Now, warrior priests. Let me show you here. Warrior priests are the ones that provide you with replenishment, so I like to have one at least, maybe essential considering the climate and better ways to do it, to ensure that your troops always have some replenishment. Now, the Empire does have, nearly every type of hero. Melee, a support hero here, you have a caster and a selection of spells really good. You can do a lot of compositions just with that. The Witch Hunter, more of a ranged hero, and also the Empire Captain, your basic standard, let me fight someone to protect the Lord hero. Now, these should give you some good choices, they have some variety. In the army compositions, I just put some, but I always would like to mention that you should have at least one hero to kind of cover your Lord, and a caster hero, unless your Lord will be doing all the casting. Remember as well that with Gelt, you can definitely benefit from a two-caster combo. It's one of the major differences that I would do with Balthazar Gelt, is that I would try to get some army compositions where I'll figure out some good different spells to use. Maybe I'll just bring, a beast, an amber wizard, so that I can have a manticore summon. That's it. That sort of idea, and then he can go around and be the scout. That's the thought process that I want you to have. Now, here are the red line skills for the Empire. As stated, noted how we have a division between the elite infantry and cavalry and everything else. So that may give you an easy choice of always going for demigryphs and great swords, for example, but it's not a bad composition if you wish some variety, of course. I do have some options for you. Now, Gelt specifically, he has some artillery buffs, he gives some armor to everyone, and has some missile strength for some luminarchs and steam tanks. I wish these were other units, but still, giving all these buffs, I tried some variety in terms of composition. Still going with the great swords. Note that you still have, like, they will have 19 more armor with Gelt. And Gelt is also very interesting to try to have a double wizard combo, especially earlier on. So that's sort of how the theme goes. This, for instance, will be, this is almost a tier 3 until we reach the mortars. And you can, of course, replace these units with something from the early on, and then you have a good early on composition that you can use, you know? But this is more of a stack with some artillery, some luminarchs for some single entity killing, and the demigryph knights and halberds here. They will be the hammer for this anvil. And this is a more straightforward, balanced composition. Nothing wrong with you using a doom stack. This is just my typical ideas that I would like to see it to try in combat. Do note, as always, although I selected a fire wizard here, you can use any wizard that you would like, of course, and sometimes you should adapt it to the composition. Maybe figure out, oh, I can have some good greatswords if I have this spell there, or I can have some good cavalry if I have that spell there for them, etc. It's up to you. Now, in terms of the what's this guy called? I know, forgot. Huntsman General. Thank you. It's not like I'm reading a script. They do buff some great swords in terms of bonus specificity, and in terms of bonuses large for spearmen and halberdiers, so as well with the range for huntsmen and archers. So of course this issues a good progression, but it may cost a little bit in the red line skills department, of course, so be wary of that. Now, these are some good, nice compositions to have. I think I would use this type of army as a sweeper army, as I've said many times. And yeah, that would be good to have some variety. Finally, some typical army first. You've seen this with Gelt, but of course here it is. This is basically a typical army. You can replace these with huntsmen as you wish, depends. It's all up for you. You can use just more demigryph knights, you can just use some artillery, etc. You can have some halberds as you wish. But I would honestly do these two compositions. These are different ones, just to have some variety again, you know. As always, note that the heroes are placeholders, right? You can use the witch hunter, you can use the support hero for replenish as well, and other battle buffs that he can give. So yeah, it's all up to you. Just learn all of the heroes and say, oh, I think I can use that hero in the middle of the greatswords to give him some buffs. It's the sort of idea that I want you to have. This is more what we call like an elite doomstack almost. Typically doomstacks are like 2 units or 1 unit even, but yeah, some people call this. I like to think that this is still balanced, still cavalry, infantry, frontline and artillery. So yeah, it only costs 11 skill points, so sometimes if you just don't want to mess too much, this is a good composition. Why Balthazar Gelt? Well, it has a good variable location. You may yet have different enemies, especially from the south, so there's going to be some different choices to make. For the most part, the idea is to still keep the other Empire factions busy and loyal, while you slowly build up until the point that you can have the whole of the Empire lands. Now, the proximity of the Empire's south borders may prove extra difficult, and moving against Sylvania, as I've done here too fast, is never an easy task as well. The playstyle appears to be focused on magic and heroes, so having more casters in your armies, there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with having some different combinations of lores, as I've said before. So your army consists of mainly average infantry, great missiles and artillery, great cavalry, no single entities, and they lack flying. This is why I loved High Elves as an outpost if you can. Replenishment is good, as long as you are in a good climate at least. Later it may become a pain in an uninhabitable climate, but Balthazar Gelt actually improves on that. Now, I believe now it is time for you to play with Balthazar Gelt of the Empire.